Who do you put up there as the greatest bodybuilders of all time? Sergio. Nobody's been born with that type of configuration. People that stand out to be like, wow, this is Mr. Olympia at the time. Sergio in his time, it's like something from another planet. He didn't do anything right and he still looked like that. This is the story of Sergio, the myth, Oliva. A man born into poverty who became bodybuilding royalty. A champion who faced discrimination, political manipulation, and personal tragedy. Yet through it all, he remained unbroken. No matter what, he would forever be the myth. July 4, 1941. Pinar del Rio, Cuba. A small town 100 miles from Havana, renowned for producing the finest cigars. Despite being born into poverty, Sergio's parents were incredibly strong, working hard to support and feed him along with his 20 brothers and sisters. At just 12 years old, while other kids his age were playing and having fun, Sergio was already working alongside his father in the sugar cane fields of Guanabacoa. A year later he took on the tough job of collecting rubbish, chicken bones, newspapers, and glass bottles to support his family, selling whatever he could find. At just 15 years old, his father decided it was time for Sergio to join the army of Fulgencio Batista, Cuba's leader at the time. The army obviously had an age requirement of 18, but Sergio was already tall and strong. Without any birth certificate to prove his age, the recruiting officer believed his father's words and allowed him to enlist. His time in the army helped him build incredible strength and endurance. As a teenager he had to walk for miles through the rough mountains of his country with barely any food, water, or rest. He even took a bullet to the arm, leaving a large scar on his right hand. Sergio quickly liked the military life, thinking he might spend his entire life as a soldier. He remembered that under Batista, Cuba was a paradise. They had beautiful beaches, the best nightclubs, and people came from all over the world. Cuba was connected to every country on earth. But life had other plans when Fidel Castro's movement overthrew Batista's government in 1959. Cuba changed overnight and Sergio lost his job in the army. With nothing to do, he spent his days on the beaches of Cuba dreaming of a life far away from his homeland. One day he planned to escape Cuba to Miami in a tiny boat with his friends. But at the last minute, when the boat arrived, he cancelled the trip. He said, I wanted to escape, but number one, in the boat it was too risky, too many sharks. I'm scared of them. If you throw them a punch they're going to eat my arms. If you're trying to kick them they're going to eat my leg. And if you're trying to swim, nobody swims faster than a shark, right? So you're dead anyway. So I said there's got to be a better way. At that time, Sergio wasn't involved in sports. He was strong from a lifetime of hard work, and sports were a luxury he couldn't afford. One sunny day, as he lay on a Cuban beach with friends, a member of the Communist Party walked by and kept coming back. Frustrated, Sergio stood up and said, "What are you looking at? There are no women over here." Then he found out that the man was the manager of the Cuban weightlifting team and he was watching his physique. After a brief chat, he handed Sergio a card and invited him to train at the local weightlifting club. The next day, Sergio went to the gym. He was told to lift an Olympic bar with two 45-pound plates on each side. Sergio lifted it with ease over his head. The coach was ecstatic, shouting, "I've found it, I've found it." Sergio thought the man was a bit crazy, but the coach saw something in him that Sergio hadn't yet realized. Within just 3 months, Sergio was lifting weights that others had struggled with for years. At his first amateur competition in Havana, Sergio didn't just compete, he shattered records. On his first lift, he broke the old record. On his second, he set a new one. And on his third lift, he broke his own record yet again. From that day on, Sergio knew his passion and realized it was his only way out of the country. He tried boxing, running, wrestling, everything. He played baseball, but those guys in Cuba, they were mean. No break. The only break I got was through the weights. In 1962, Sergio had a plan to defect to the United States during the Pan American Games in Kingston, Jamaica. He was the captain of the Cuban weightlifting team, but nobody knew his plan. Under Castro's regime, no one trusted anyone. Everyone was scared of everyone else. Despite the danger, the 21-year-old Sergio kept his plan to himself, sharing it only with his father. His father's words still echoed in his mind. If you have the chance to go, don't look back. If they catch you, you know what will happen. And Sergio knew he might never see his father again, but yet he was determined to leave. On the day of the competition, he finally located the U.S. Embassy and realized it was now or never. He started jogging, telling everyone he was just warming up. But suddenly, he took off running, faster and faster, like a deer escaping a hunter. He ran like a rabbit and he was fast. And they're chasing him. Armed guards chasing him down the street. It was crazy. He wore only shorts, a cap, and no shoes. As he ran, he saw a crowd behind him and panic set in. He thought it was the secret police. If caught, Sergio faced 30 years in jail or even the firing squad. But as he sprinted, he realized the people chasing him were not the secret police. They were 65 members of the Cuban delegation, fellow athletes, and even some of Castro's special police. They all wanted freedom too. As Sergio approached the embassy, 2 Marines stood at the entrance. Without slowing down, he jumped over a wheelbarrow of mangoes and leaped a large fence. Inside, everyone was shouting and hugging. Even Castro's secret police were celebrating. The American officials quickly realized the gravity of the situation. They called Washington, and soon after, a small plane arrived to take them all to Miami, Florida, where they received political asylum. And just like that, Sergio's dream came true. He left behind a life of uncertainty for a fresh start and a chance at the American dream. I'm not rich, but I feel like $1 million. When Sergio arrived in America, life was anything but simple. He was working as a TV repairman and couldn't do much. Sergio knew he had to avoid Florida, where many members of the Cuban community lived. Despite the chaos, Sergio had his sights set on one thing, a fresh start. He always wanted to work and have the good things that American people had. When asked where he wanted to go, Sergio gave a surprising answer: Chicago. Those around him were shocked. They couldn't understand why he would choose such a cold place to go. Snow and a history of gangsters. But Sergio had made up his mind and he simply liked the sound of Chicago. In 1963, Sergio moved to Chicago, a city that would become his home for the next 45 years. He had opportunities to move anywhere else, even to become a citizen of Australia, but he refused. When asked what he loved most about the city, Sergio's face lit up and he said everything. The people, the food, the nightlife. You can eat Greek, Italian, Chinese, and Cuban. You can go dancing every night if you want. Chicago has it all. Despite the city's notorious past, Sergio found nothing but welcoming arms. He started off working long hours in a steel mill plant. Continuing his exercise program, he joined the Duncan YMCA. One day he crossed paths with Mr. America Bob Guida, who took Sergio under his wing and showed him how to train like a bodybuilder. Bob was a really good bodybuilder, but he also knew a lot about training, about kinesiology and stuff, and he took Sergio under his wing and helped him get into bodybuilding. It was there in that bustling gym that Sergio's journey into bodybuilding truly began. He decided to leave weightlifting behind and fully commit to bodybuilding, a sport that had been banned by Cuba's communist government. In 1962, Sergio began competing in amateur athletic union contests and he was placing really low. He lost the Mr. Chicago title in his first year of competition, and he was losing to bodybuilders who were not even close to his physique. It was a strange time, for a strange organization, in a strange sport. And I think it might have been a little prejudiced. They never let black guys win back then in the 60s. There were two competing factions fighting for bodybuilding supremacy, the ultra-conservative AAU and the International Federation of Bodybuilding. In those days, black-skinned competitors were often bypassed for the white ones. Also, the AAU's Mr. America contests were run like male beauty pageants. Contestants were interviewed and judged on diction, vocabulary, knowledge of world events, and grooming. Athletic points were awarded and counted heavily. Sergio came back in 1964 and won the Mr. Chicago, but was continually denied the coveted Mr. America title. In 1966, he was allowed to win the Most Muscular award, but the overall award was still out of reach. There was no way on earth that the AAU was going to allow him to win. Never. No one ever in the sport ever dealt with what my dad dealt with, and they never will. I've heard him talk to other people where certain judges and certain people told him no black person or Jew will ever win. I can't imagine after hearing so much hateful stuff. After a while, it's eventually going to turn you into a different person. Finally, Sergio decided to switch over to the IFBB and try his luck there. The Weeders were more than happy to give the young man a place to compete and be judged strictly on muscles, and who cares if you are black or don't speak English. In preparation for his first Mr. Olympia appearance, he was able to push his body weight up from 215 to 228 pounds in just a 6-week period. Sergio quickly won the 1966 Mr. World title and then took 4th place in the brand new Mr. Olympia contest that was won for the second year by Larry Scott. He made so much improvement from 1966 to 67. The funny thing is, I wonder what drugs Sergio used back then. It was probably like nothing. I bet Sergio was essentially natural, probably even compared to Arnold and those other guys. After that, Sergio easily won the 1967 IFBB Mr. Universe title. And now, he was ready to win his first Olympia title. When Sergio entered the 1967 Mr. Olympia contest in New York, the crowd was astounded. Harold Poole, second to Larry Scott the previous 2 years, was relegated to the runner-up spot again. Even the rugged Chuck Sipes had no chance against him. He won his first Olympia title at just 26 years old. The world of bodybuilding had found its new king. He went from last place in the Olympia to winning the Olympia. $1,000, and he was happy to get it. That was big money for him back then. Sergio was soon known as the Myth because of his crazy genetics. He was getting bigger and bigger at a rapid pace. His body transformations were unreal, especially for a man who never dieted or used a proper training program. He was a freak, a real freak that even Larry Scott was afraid to go up against. Sergio Oliva was on a whole other planet. People that stand out to be like, wow, this is Mr. Olympia at the time. Sergio in his time, it's like something from another planet at that time. Nobody looked like that. Nobody could even think about looking like this. Sergio had no weak body parts. He had everything. Nobody's been born with that type of configuration. He had the chest, the back, the shoulders, traps. He had forearms, he had calves, thighs. His legs were huge for back then in the 60s. Probably some of the best genetics to this day. He was the most genetically gifted. Maybe so crazy that he didn't care about showmanship. He was the man who couldn't be beat. Sergio's physique was so dominant that in 1968, he won his second Mr. Olympia title without any competition. No other bodybuilder dared to stand on stage next to the Myth. They were afraid to come to the stage. They gave me all the trophies. Chuck Sipes didn't go in it. Harold Poole didn't go in it. No one dared to go up against him because they could see he was such a freak and it felt like no one could take him down. But a determined newcomer from Austria had just arrived in America, ready to challenge the sport's biggest names. Joe was in love with Arnold. He got the best prize in the world when he got Arnold. He always would say, "Arnold, I want you to be the best and the smartest bodybuilder in the whole world." Sergio was a really hard worker. He was a working man's bodybuilder. He would work all day. He never was a sponsored athlete. While Arnold arrived in the US with a salary, a car, a house, and a role in a Hercules movie, spending his time training and posing for Weider magazines, Sergio faced a different reality. He was spending 10 to 14 hours a day working in the foundry, which was an intense place, hot and tough, with temperatures reaching 120 degrees. Pouring and shaping metal, sweating every ounce of energy. After work, Sergio didn't rest. He headed straight to the Duncan YMCA where he trained for another 3 hours. His evenings were spent in English classes. His only breaks were on weekends, which he filled with dancing or the occasional movie, finding joy in the simple pleasures of life. Once he began earning good money, Sergio moved to his own place. He got out of the steel mill and went to work in a brutal Chicago stockyard. He worked long and hard and eventually became a butcher. But he would actually wear butcher overalls. That's what he was wearing when he was pumping up, and he would have blood on it and everything. In 1969, after a year of solid training in the US, Arnold Schwarzenegger entered the IFBB Mr. Universe title to avenge his embarrassing loss to Frank Zane. Arnold was tanned, ripped, and ready. He easily won the Mr. Universe contest before deciding to take on Sergio in the Mr. Olympia contest that same night. Arnold and Franco freaked out backstage when Oliva stripped off his butcher uniform to reveal the freakiest body they had ever seen. With Franco saying it must have been the lighting. But Arnold knew better. In the book The Education of a Bodybuilder, Arnold tells of their first encounter. Then for the first time, I saw Sergio Oliva in person. I understood why they called him the Myth. It was as jarring as if I'd walked into a wall. He destroyed me. He was so huge and so fantastic. There was no way I could have thought of beating him. I admitted my defeat and felt some of my pump go away. I never liked to admit defeat, but I thought Sergio was better. There were no two ways about it. That night, Sergio claimed his third Olympia title, unaware it would be his last. Arnold gave him a big kiss on stage and said enjoy it, because this is the last time. In order to understand his opponent better, Arnold traveled to Chicago to train with the newly married Sergio. And he stayed with him. He stayed with him at his house with him and his wife. He trained with him at the Duncan YMCA because he wanted to know what Sergio was all about. He wanted to learn about this guy. Arnold was amazed at how strong Sergio was and how hard he worked. He would do like 5 sets of triple sets, bench press, chin-ups, and then bent over rowing. He would just go from one to the next to the next to the next without stopping. He wouldn't stop. And he would do 5 sets like that and then he says okay, now let's start training, and he would not count those sets. It was the craziest thing. I said wait a minute, you don't count that. That's 25 sets. He said nah baby, come on, let's go. Back in the day, these guys had to figure out a leg curl worked your hamstrings. Pull downs worked your lats. There was no book for them to open and be like oh I want to work on this, these are the exercises I should do. What's even more incredible is that Sergio developed a raging metabolism that allowed him to ingest tons of indiscriminate calories yet stay lean. One of his supervisors at work said that Sergio was eating 2 packs of Hostess Twinkies and 2 bottles of Mountain Dew for lunch. He didn't do anything right and he still looked like that. Because if you think about Sergio had incredible charisma. Anybody who knew him back then, this guy was like Arnold. He was very cocky, he was very arrogant, he was a great dresser. The Myth was the most stylish bodybuilder ever. His outfits were just as bold and eye-catching as he was. He often wore high-waisted flared white pants with stylish shoes. His shirts had to be specially made with slits in the sleeves to fit his huge 21-inch arms. Sergio liked to wear a lot of gold jewelry, including several bracelets, necklaces, and a large gold medallion that became his signature piece. He was a sharp dresser. He was a good-looking guy. I used to see him in Chicago and he would come with these high-waisted white pants with the bell-bottoms and he's always got a hat on and the guns just busting out of the shirt. And he just looked like a really rough guy. He had scars on his face and he had the extrovert personality. Always very popular with females. He had this big gold medallion and Mr. T copied off Sergio. In 1970, politics took a turn when Joe and Jim Lorimer tricked Sergio into competing at the Mr. World contest by saying Arnold wouldn't show up. Sergio lost. He wasn't prepared for Arnold. He still had 2 weeks until the Olympia. It was the perfect opportunity for Joe to show that the seemingly unbeatable Sergio could be defeated. So they got Sergio to go into the contest. Sergio said he did not know Arnold was going in that contest. From what I heard, the lighting at that contest was really bright and Sergio had one problem: he used to put a lot of oil on his body and he looked smoother than he was. He wasn't very disciplined when it came to posing. Like he would hit an upper body shot and he would leave his legs unflexed. Or he would pose too fast. He wasn't really a great poser, where Arnold really perfected his posing. He made sure every pose he did was technically perfect, and Arnold ended up beating Sergio. And Sergio was shocked. Sergio could not believe Arnold beat him. And after the contest, what happened back then was all the guys would go out together and eat. There were no rivalries. They were all friends. So all the bodybuilders go out to a restaurant and they're eating and Sergio goes up to Arnold and he says, "I can't believe you beat me tonight." Arnold tells him, he goes, "Sergio, if you would have been about 8 pounds heavier, I never would have been able to beat you." Of course, Sergio goes back to Chicago and he does what? He eats more. He tried to get bigger. 2 weeks later at the Olympia, Sergio and Arnold had to face each other again in New York City. The contest was very close. The New York fans were big Sergio fans. Arnold comes out, he gets good applause, but then Sergio comes out. The place goes crazy. Sergio looked amazing that night. He was huge, but he was a little too smooth. During the posing round, after posing for hours, Arnold tricked Sergio by saying that he was tired and suggested they go backstage. Arnold then put a little trick on him. We were doing pose off after pose off and then I said to him, "I think it's enough. I think that they must know by now who is going to be the winner." And he said, "You're right." And then he walked off and they pointed at him like he's giving up. The judges saw Sergio leaving and gave the win to Arnold. He turned around and said, "You son of a bitch." He was like really pissed off about it. But this was not enough. The following year, Oliva was banned from the 1971 Olympia for competing in a rival federation event, the 1971 NABA Mr. Universe. This was extremely controversial because Arnold had competed for that very same contest the year before. And they didn't make the rule until after he competed in another federation, which everybody was doing. Sergio was not an insider in the IFBB. He entered contests based on the information that he had at the time. Obviously, if he'd known that he'd be banned from competing in the Olympia, he wouldn't have entered those contests. Here's another funny thing: they made Sergio guest pose at that same Olympia, but they didn't allow him to compete. It was hilarious. A week later they had the Mr. Olympia in Paris, France. Sergio actually comes over to Paris. They tell him, "Sergio, you can't compete." So what does that mean? You lose all these tickets from people coming to see my dad. So what do the Weeders do? They make my dad a guest poser at the Olympia, but they wouldn't let him go up against Arnold. And without Sergio to challenge him, Arnold won the 1971 Mr. Olympia without any competition, since he was the only participant. After this setback, Oliva was determined to take his revenge and beat Schwarzenegger. Under the high-intensity training of Arthur Jones, Oliva challenged Schwarzenegger for the 1972 Olympia in Essen, Germany. And it was one of the sport's most memorable showdowns ever. Here's what happened. They go to the prejudging. They don't have a theater for the prejudging. They have to do the prejudging in another building. So it's not on stage. They're actually standing against the wall in a regular room. In a sneaky move, Arnold suggested that the stage be set in a darker room to make Sergio's skin blend in. Arnold's white, Sergio's black. He figured he would stand out more against the wall. Arnold wasn't in his best shape. He didn't bring the best conditioning and had a poor performance. While Sergio, by all accounts, was in his all-time greatest shape and was completely confident he would regain the Mr. Olympia title at a reportedly super-ripped 250 pounds. Sergio goes in looking unbelievable. This is the best he's ever looked in his career. Still got that tiny waist, huge, bigger than ever, but now he's ripped. He was bigger and had better legs. His tiny waist was contrasted with the incredible mass and thickness in his full muscle bellies. His muscle definition and overall conditioning were better than Arnold's. 3 judges had Sergio in first place, with only 1 judge's vote for Arnold. But Joe Weider switched the judges at the last minute, and Arnold was declared the winner in what is to this day the most controversial bodybuilding contest of all time. He didn't deserve it. Sergio should have won. They gave it to him because it was in Germany. Every bodybuilder who was there, all the guys that were there, they all said Sergio should have won. That was a really controversial Mr. Olympia. Even Arnold in his book said if he was a judge, he probably would have put Sergio in first. After this, Sergio cut all ties with the IFBB when he continued to compete for rival federations. And by 1973, his rivalry with Arnold came to an end. It all reached a boiling point after the famous incident in Tijuana at Mr. International. There was a contest called the Mr. International contest that used to be held in Tijuana, Mexico, every year. And all the bodybuilders would go there. And one of the reasons the bodybuilders would go, of course, was to get their drugs from Tijuana. Arnold and Joe Weider were in the audience when Oliva challenged Schwarzenegger to come up on stage with him to see who was the best-built man in the world. He wanted a showdown on more neutral ground. He goes, "Come on up on stage and pose against me." Weider quickly advised Arnold to stay in his seat and ignore the challenge by Sergio. So Arnold never ended up going on stage, but eventually Franco Columbu ended up accepting Sergio's invitation. Franco got on stage and competed against him. The IFBB was so angry with Oliva's defiant attitude, shortly after the contest they decided to suspend him again from the 1973 Olympia. Anyways, after that Sergio had just ruined it with Weider. Weider wrote these really bad articles in the magazine. Here's the article. It says Sergio Oliva, a chicken without a head by Joe Weider. But that's page 1. On page 2, he goes full-blown commando. He's using words like bitch and hooker. And it was just really bad blood between Sergio and Joe Weider. And a lot of people look back throughout history and say, well, maybe Joe Weider was a little racist. Maybe he had it in for Sergio. And maybe he put these rules in place specifically to prevent Arnold from being beaten by Sergio, and he wanted to hold Sergio back from winning all these Olympias. And there's a lot of conspiracy theorists out there that believe that was the case. 3 weeks later, the Mr. Olympia contest takes place in New York. Arnold wins. But what's important about that contest was pumping iron, which came 1 year later. Now if Sergio would have been in that contest, who knows? Sergio could have got some great publicity. Maybe Sergio would have been in the movie Pumping Iron. After this, Sergio walked away from the IFBB and he continued to compete in lesser-known organizations like WBBG, where he held a knockoff contest called the Mr. Olympus, which Sergio won easily several times. When Sergio came over to the WBBG, it was a big deal in bodybuilding history. A 3-time Mr. Olympia, basically one of the IFBB's best bodybuilders, to come over to another organization. Sergio would often show up smooth for these contests, but he would always win. The challenge of competing against Arnold was gone and Sergio didn't have the motivation to train hard like he did when he was competing for the Mr. Olympia. I think deep down he was mad at himself for letting him get screwed back in the day and then watching someone he knew that he was better than go on to have the greatest career ever. I mean, even the stories, Arnold even jokes about it. The stories of Arnold tricking my dad on stage and getting him to move the competition to a different room. I think a big part of it is my dad was mad at himself for letting all this happen to him. Well, that's life. In 1976, while Arnold Schwarzenegger pursued a career in Hollywood, Sergio Oliva chose a different path and became a police officer in Chicago, something he had always dreamed of doing. I had the opportunity to join the department. I like it because every day something different and I feel myself helping a lot of different people with a lot of trouble. I know I've been helping a lot. He wasn't a special or class 2 cop like Ronnie Coleman, but a regular one. He worked in the Rogers Park neighborhood for more than 25 years. In 1984, Joe Weider and Wayne DeMilia made an agreement with Sergio to return to the IFBB by entering the Mr. Olympia contest again after 12 years. And the return of the myth. Sergio Oliva last won the title in 1969. Even at 43 years old and past his peak, Sergio still looked incredible on stage with his small waist and huge arms, finishing in a very controversial 8th place. Most bodybuilding experts and media at the time felt that he should have placed in the top 5. Sergio, who was famously known for his fiery temper and blunt honesty, seemed ready to leave the stage. But then his wife Arlene handed him their newborn son, Sergio Jr. Holding his baby in his arms, Sergio walked to the microphone to speak to his fans. The place that I took tonight, it doesn't matter. 8, 9, 1, 17, 20. No matter what, I will be forever the myth. This what I have in my hand, it is 9 pounds 14 ounces, a baby boy. Perhaps the next myth. I never met the bodybuilder. I mean literally the pictures where he's holding me up, that's literally his second to last show he ever did. So about the time I'm born, he's pretty much done with his career. So I only knew the cop. A year later, Oliva returned to the Mr. Olympia for one last time, where again he placed 8th and Lee Haney took home his second consecutive title. Knee problems had prevented him from training his legs heavy and his mythical body was starting to show the signs of aging. The myth had planned on a 1986 Olympia appearance. However, an unfortunate domestic incident ended his bodybuilding career. During an argument with his wife Arlene, Sergio was shot 5 times in the stomach with a .38 revolver. So crazy is that my dad didn't even know he was shot. He thought that she missed. And despite his life-threatening wounds, Sergio got into the car and drove himself to the hospital. He was hospitalized in serious condition and he miraculously survived from several bullets, including one that came perilously close to his liver. Later his wife claimed it was self-defense as Sergio was coming after her. In 1995, Sergio was honored by Joe Weider on stage with all 9 Mr. Olympia winners in an iconic moment. The funny thing is even in retirement, Sergio still stood out, looking better than everyone else on stage. Sergio, when he was at his peak, he was unbelievable. I remember one day we met in Chicago and I invited him to a very sophisticated restaurant and he had to wear a shirt and a tie. And he's showing off. Sure enough, Sergio came in with his shirt and with his medals in front of him. And I thought they were going to throw all of us out. But not Sergio. And they looked at him, they didn't say a word. The place was quiet. They just stared and stared at him. He was absolutely wonderful. Popular physique, you can imagine. I won't say much, Joe already said it all. God bless us all. Jim Manion went up to my dad and he went to shake his hand and he's clearly trying to squash any grudges that they've had for 40 years. And he goes to shake his hand, he's like, hey, the myth. And my dad totally deases him. He pretty much did one of the moves his hand. He did that in front of everybody. In 2003, Sergio retired from the Chicago Police Department. But unfortunately, the last few years of his life were not easy. He had 17 surgeries throughout his body, surgeries on knees, toes, elbow, rear deltoid, and the shoulder joint. He was in a bad car accident years ago and then caught a staph infection while still recovering in the hospital. He had lost a lot of weight due to kidney failure and needed dialysis 3 times a week. He moved very slowly and felt embarrassed by how he looked. Sergio was to sadly pass away on November 12, 2012. We really lost some great opportunities to see Arnold and Sergio compete against each other more. It would have really been great if Sergio would have beat Arnold in 72. We will always remember Sergio for who he was and what he stood for. During his career, he won 21st place bodybuilding titles. And he was the first non-white athlete to win Mr. America, Mr. World, Mr. International, Mr. Universe, and Mr. Olympia. Through all the ups and downs, Sergio never stopped fighting. No matter how many come and go, Sergio will forever be the myth. May he rest in peace. No matter what, I will be forever the myth. Sergio Oliva, 1941 to 2012. A man who proved that greatness cannot be contained by politics, prejudice, or even bullets. The myth lives on.